They're going to have to stay, they can't go back. And so if we can teach them a little bit of English, it feels like, you feel like you're doing something worthwhile.
I think there's a lot of misconceptions about people with AIDS, that somehow they're very different than other people, that they deserve having AIDS. My experience has been that people with AIDS are just like anybody else.
When I first took the project, I really didn't know a whole lot about the death penalty. I had my faith that was telling me that it just isn't right, but I really didn't know anybody on death row.
There are those that really depend upon the food bank, some elderly, some single parents who their food stamps, their supports just do not reach to the end of the month.
It's an English-speaking class, but it's also a way of learning for the child to learn to play with foreigners, that foreigners are people too.
We're not solving the total problem, the total cycle of poverty, but we're giving a lot of people something they couldn't have gotten any other way. And a lot of that is pride.
The voices and faces of Brethren Volunteer Service workers on assignment, answering the question of who is my neighbor. Those about to leave for assignment, about to travel hundreds for some thousands of miles away to come face to face with their neighbors, near and far, for a year or two of voluntary service. They all have one thing in common, a desire to respond to the neighbors around them, to help those who are hurting, to work for peace, to seek justice, to serve the needs of others, the kind of work BVSers have been doing for more than 40 years as they strive to move this world along. The world they enter is often not a kind place. There is hunger, homelessness, poverty, the scars of war and political strife. But it is here that Brethren Volunteer Service goes in the name of Christ, to serve, to heal, to identify with those who are suffering, such as persons at the Dundalk, Maryland Family Crisis Center, seeking to escape domestic violence, both physical and mental.
Lots of times that's what's beaten, is their self-esteem, or their, just their sense of self is just really battered. They need someone to be able to talk to. They need someone who cares that they came, that they made even that decision to come here.
Or those suffering from AIDS in Minneapolis.
People with AIDS lose their health, they lose their financial security, often they lose their friends and their family.
Gerry worked at the Minnesota AIDS Project, developing a program to improve the quality of life for people with AIDS, arranging for theaters to donate free movie tickets, editing a newsletter for AIDS victims, working to maintain a sense of dignity.
There was a way of looking at people with AIDS in this organization as clients. And I think I brought more of a perspective to this organization of working hand in hand with people with AIDS and seeing them as equals and trying to just see them as people and not just as clients.
It's gave me new direction to go instead of staying home, feeling sorry for myself, being included with others, not being feeling like this is an isolating disease, which I'm the only one, and it makes you feel like you got family.
All across the country, BVSers are in places where they may not have expected to find themselves. Melissa Bell is a licensed architect from California who simply requested to be placed where she was needed the most. That turned out to be the mountains of Kentucky, in one of the poorest regions of the United States.
There's houses that don't have bathrooms, don't have any running water, a pit toilet over an open creek, and you might have 5 or 6 people living in a house with 2 or 3 rooms that has no insulation.
Her project, Kentucky Mountain Housing Development Corporation, works at these problems by building and repairing houses for low-income residents at a price they can afford. About the time Melissa arrived, Kentucky Mountain Housing had desperately needed an architect to certify construction plans.
If we didn't have someone like Melissa to help us do this, we would have to go out and buy plans that have already been stamped and certified, which would cost us $75 to $100 per set of plans, but more than likely we would have a hard time finding plans that that would fit our needs or the family's situation where we're trying to work.
Melissa's work was not confined to the drawing board. Frequently, she ended up working side by side with the construction crews. Keith Rutter intended to volunteer at a hands-on kind of project, but wound up instead at a Washington, D.C. think tank, the Center for Theology and Public Policy, doing research.
Looking at problems that arise in public policy and how they affect a church.
BVSers work at a wide assortment of projects. Some, like Keith, seek institutional solutions to problems. Others meet immediate human needs face to face. Tom Hickey taught English at an agricultural institute in Poland, helping to bring different cultures a little closer together.
Overall, the world is becoming smaller daily, and I think language is something that needs to, instead of build barriers, break them down.
Bill and Jeanne Chappel have also been breaking down barriers at their project in Hiroshima, Japan, with the World Friendship Center, teaching English conversation classes and operating a kind of daycare center.
The little Japanese children come, and after they're there an hour, they're beginning to climb on Grandpa's lap, or to build blocks with him, or to make Play-Doh things with me, and become friends with us.
We're building friendship between two countries that have not always seen eye to eye on things.
Many BVS projects work at peacemaking and reconciliation. May Van Baale joined BVS at the age of 68 and was placed at Jubilee Partners in Georgia, teaching English to Central American refugee children about to be resettled in Canada.
What can you do, Carolina? I can run. What can you do, then? I can run. Run.
Even with the adults, we start with a very simple conversation like, my name is, what is your name? And then, how are you? I am fine. How are you? Fine, thank you. And then we start with articles, spoon, fork, knife, and eventually they just learn.
Boom. What is this? This is a fork.
I just like to help people, and I thought in BVS I could do that. Some people at home said, well, you can volunteer right here. You don't have to go away to do it. But you're more committed. I'm much more committed when I know I have to get up in the morning and go do this.
The motivation behind BVSers is the same now as it was when the program was officially launched in 1949. To share God's love through acts of service, serving human need as an outgrowth of faith in Jesus Christ.
Christ has to work through our hands, and so I just feel like my hands are His hands, and I'm doing what I can.
For Jody Ellingson, growing up in the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, now a partner in BVS with the Church of the Brethren, volunteering is a logical outgrowth of her Christian upbringing.
It's just like one more step, you know, in the faith, in the process of growth in your relationship with Christ. When you get baptized, that's a step, and volunteering is just another step for me, I think, in my faith process and that growth.
Bill and Jeanne Chappel see BVS as a way to return to God a portion of what they've been given.
We were always raised to give a tithe of our money to the church. And we have the feeling that we need to give also a tithe of our lives to the church.
Just as individuals can serve in BVS, so too can whole congregations as they send forth a volunteer as their representative. Mark Bucher served at the Good Shepherd Food Bank in Lewiston, Maine, with the support and blessing of his home church.
They do feel that we are an extension of them, and they're ministering through us here at the Good Shepherd Food Bank and in Maine.
Members of his congregation visited Mark and are keeping track of the work at the food bank.
We have sent some pictures back for them to put up on a bulletin board. They get a newsletter. I really sincerely believe they feel that they are a part of us here.
BVSers find their eyes opened by projects in a way that prevents them from ever looking at the world quite the same. Pam Rutter worked at the Washington, D.C. office of the National Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty.
This has changed my life. It shook my life upside down, and it's just opened my eyes to a whole world that I never even knew about. And it's really become something that's so important to me. So we've got a potentially innocent person in Louisiana facing a death sentence. Before coming to this project, I would have been content to go to church, to have a nice job, to have a nice family, and to spend the rest of my life doing that. And now, I can't stop doing this work. Whether I stay at the coalition for the next 5 years or I change jobs, it's always going to be a part of my life now.
BVSers grow in their understanding of people, of cultures, and of life itself.
Life has a little more meaning, and it has a little more, each day becomes a little more important when you're dealing with a fatal illness. And I guess that's made me realize in my own life that you know, each one of my days is important too. You know, I've taken them less for granted.
And volunteers negotiating their way through previously unfamiliar places like Skierniewice, Poland, helps to put life's problems into perspective.
The challenges here are immense, and as they are anywhere in a new culture. And I think overcoming those challenges helps you people to realize they can overcome normal challenges in everyday life.
In Belfast, Northern Ireland, the everyday challenge is to live together as Protestant and Catholic. BVSers like Nancy Shallenberger and Deb Fuller seek reconciliation and healing among the brokenness in that country.
I've realized by being here that my view of the world to this point had been very narrow. And by being here, I've realized how fortunate I have been in my life and the many advantages that I have taken for granted.
Seeing life in perspective is only one of the side benefits of a BVS term. It's part of the reverse mission that many BVSers feel happens when they volunteer.
It allows me to be more sensitive to people instead of stratifying someone so much and say, I feel like I'm here and they're sort of lower class. I feel like we're all people, we're all one-on-one and able to deserve the same things.
I will have gained a lot more than I will have given. To go into a home and have them serve you is something that I didn't really understand the concept of before.
It broadens your perspective of the world. You realize that what happens in the United States is just a small portion of what's going on in the world.
BVSers are housed in different types of living arrangements. Some live with families of church members, some in apartments with other BVSers, and some in community with other volunteers. BVSers working in Lewiston, Maine share housing and make decisions as a group. Volunteers working in Washington, D.C. share a building called Brethren House.
It really taught you to care for other people. I mean, that you really need to live in community.
You have, at one time, at least 13 people who are working in the area of peace and social justice. And they all have gifts and they all have resources. And you come together and you just share, and it's very rewarding.
Despite the diversity of people in BVS and the diversity of projects, there are common threads which link all who desire to serve. A need to act on their commitment to help others. A belief that there is more to life than piling up treasures on earth. It's evident in the words of those who have spent time earning the $35 a month BVS salary.
I'm living below the poverty level officially this year, and I don't feel like I'm poor. I'm having such a wealth of experiences.
Different people would say something about the sacrifice, or that's quite a sacrifice, and I honestly can say it. I've never looked at VS as a sacrifice.
It's not a sacrifice, really, because we're gaining so much.
I really appreciate the opportunity to be in a different culture and have the chance to realize that my life is connected to everybody's life.
Those who have taken time out from lucrative careers for BVS say it best. Michelle Smith managed a car rental agency.
You just get so wrapped up in that world that you forget that there are other people around you.
Russ Madison was earning an MBA at the University of Chicago.
I was climbing the ladder, but I just didn't find it to be satisfying to myself, and I'm kind of looking at BVS as an opportunity to look if I'm willing to make the lifestyle adjustments and sacrifices that being a servant of the Lord will mean for me in my life.
Janet Larmore had been working for 6 years for a major CPA firm.
I began to get more and more distressed at the kinds of goals that I saw people were working towards, and the overriding factor in people's lives is to be motivated by money.
You get so caught up in getting your degree, you're going to school, getting a degree, getting a job, and you kind of lose track of or lose sight of what God wants you to do. And I think I need to get back in touch with that, and that's what BVS has done for me.
Before, I was concerned, like I said, with being the top advertising copywriter in the country and making loads of money by manipulating people. That doesn't appeal to me at all anymore. I know I'm not the same, and I like myself better than I liked myself then.
Brethren Volunteer Service is people, giving of their time and skills to help others in need, the neighbors around them. It's a way for persons to work at issues greater than themselves, recognizing that their efforts may not immediately solve deep-rooted problems, but can be part of the ongoing work for justice and peace, work that continues from one group of volunteers to the next.
I'll be going to San Antonio, Texas to be working with Central American refugees.
I'll be going to Washington, D.C. to work in a shelter for homeless families.
I'll be working in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania with Evangelicals for Social Action.
We will be going overseas to Poland for 2 years to teach English.
And I'll be going to State College, Pennsylvania, and to work with volunteers in prison.
I'll work in the soup kitchen and in a women's shelter in Olympia, Washington.
I'll be going to Mannheim, Pennsylvania to work with troubled youth.
I'm going to Monticello, Iowa to work at a camp for mentally and physically handicapped people.
And I'll be working at the Washington Office on Haiti in Washington, D.C.
I'm going to the Netherlands to work on the disarmament campaigns.
We'll be going to Manchester, Kentucky.
We will be serving the Mud Lick and Flat Creek Churches of the Brethren, working in the church and in the community.
And I'm going to Houston, Texas to work with emotionally handicapped children.
I'll be going to Washington, D.C. to work at the Church of the Brethren Soup Kitchen.
People always ask that, why did you join BVS? And oftentimes we've answered, why is it that we're in BVS? Why isn't everybody in BVS? It's an important thing to do. There's a lot of suffering in this world.
1 year is really a very short time to give in service and to even begin to attempt to make a difference.
And our
Those of us who worked on the program you've just seen noticed something about the places we visited, about the projects that were included. Many of the project directors, those in charge of the programs where BVSers are now working, are themselves former volunteers. To us, that indicates how service becomes a lifetime commitment for many volunteers, how life-changing a term in BVS can actually be. In fact, more than half of the programs where BVSers are now working have former BVSers either on staff or on the board of directors. A good example is Kentucky Mountain Housing, an independent program begun by former BVSer Dwayne Yost. Here's a quick look at how that program in Manchester, Kentucky has carried on the spirit of BVS through one of its former volunteers.